G'day, I'm Jarrad Mahon from Investor's Edge Real Estate, and thanks for joining me for my Perth Property Market Update for April. I'm going to cover off the sale market, the rental market, all the happenings that are going on, as well as the property clock and how we relate to the other states of Australia. So launching straight into it, you can see that the number of properties for sale trend has been down since about January 2016, which is a great sign that our market is gradually recovering. What started happening in the last few months, however, is as those market conditions are improving, there's more and more sellers that have wanted to offload properties that are starting to come on and increase that number. So you can see that we're actually up by 4.4% in the total number of properties that we've got for sale compared to October last year. And we're still down on a year ago with the total number of properties for sale. So what we've really got to look for is the demand in buyers going to keep the overall trend in the number of for sale heading down or not? So when we go over and look at that trend in the buyer demand, we can see that the number of sold has kind of been going sideways. Well, it has been going sideways, so we haven't had any major uptick in that buyer demand yet. Where's that buyer demand going to come from? It could come from the eastern states investors, it could come from interstate and overseas migration, and we've really got to look to see if the ever-increasing economic factors are going to drive those two things or not. So those numbers are continuing to improve with the economy, and we will hopefully start to see this tick up. But in the last 1 to 2 months, and especially this month, we've seen a pretty low level of buyer demand, which is surprising. It's 15% down on the demand week to week number of sales since October, and it's around 14% down on the same time last year. So we really don't want that trend to continue. It's still within its overall trend line, but we really need that to tick back up and continue to have properties turning over and selling quicker, if we don't want the overall supply to start to increase outside of its downward trend. When we actually look at the Perth house median price, we've got some exciting news there for current property owners. For the very first time since June 2015, we had a downward trend in the overall price, and we've broken out above that trend now with a median price of $525, and we need to see if that price increasing trend is going to continue, but it's the first time that I can report to you that we've actually broken out of that trend for price. Now, price is always the last of the different factors that show up. So the supply's been ever decreasing, demand's been about the same, and now we've got to that stage where we're starting to see some price pressure back on. So that's a good sign for our overall market, that we've officially turned the bottom and we're starting to recover when we talk about the averages across Perth. When we actually look at the unit market, we've also had a minor uptick there as well to 415. So keep an eye on that. It hasn't been a stronger breakout, but it's certainly been a bit of a breakout on the downward trend. So I'm going to keep a very close eye on that unit pricing as well, because the unit market is generally trailing the sale market by about 12 to 18 months. So I would expect this to drift around this price without any strong uptake, but if it starts to surprise us, that'll be a very positive sign for units. Now, going into the rental market, we can see a very strong trend developing in the number for rent decreasing down. We're 18% down in the total number, which is massive since October last year, and 19.2% down on the year. So you can actually see the majority of that decrease has come in the 6 months since October, and it's really started heavily decreasing in the last 3 to 4. So as the market starts to tighten up, we see the vacancy rate drop as well. So look how steep that drop is. We're down to 5.1% vacancy rate, and that's a 26% drop since October, 21% since the previous time last year. So that's very encouraging, and our rental market's starting to tighten up, and we're actually finding it a little bit easier to lease properties now, thank God. It was very tough last year, and we're starting to find rental prices increasing in many of the middle price suburbs. The further out, lower end suburbs, not as much demand there, taking a bit longer to rent there, so it's going to take a little bit more time for those outer areas to recover yet. When we look at the median rent, the rental price is unchanged since May of last year at $350 per week, after decreasing for all so long since November of 2013. So waiting to see this rental price have its first little uptick. Hasn't happened yet, so we're not fully in recovery mode for the rental prices, but you'd have to think that as this vacancy rate continues to drop, usually when we get to in the 3%, that's where we will start to see pressure again on the rental price and see that start coming back up. Obviously that varies depending on which suburb your property's in, and we can give you specific advice depending on. So timing the property clock, and where does Perth sit? We're still in the bottom of the market phase, as you can see here, along with Alice Springs and Rockhampton and Darwin, we're tracking together, and the other capital cities are further around. Brisbane's in its rising market, Sydney coming off the boil in its starting to decline, and Newcastle peak of market, Melbourne's approaching its peak. So I suspect what's going to happen on a national level is as Sydney and Melbourne are coming off their markets, there's going to be a bit of pain to be felt over there, and a lot of the Reserve Bank's policy is very heavily influenced by the East Coast. So hopefully that will see our interest rates kept unchanged for some time. Imagine if they started increasing interest rates on top of the coming off of the market over there, there'd be even more pain to be felt. So I think because we're over in Perth, pretty much isolated from the rest of the country, they'll be doing what is best for the East Coast, not necessarily what's best for us. So the holding rate will serve us and help us too. The units clock, you can see that Perth's still around here in this declining market, and that's why I say that generally speaking it's another 12 to 18 months off, and that's because of a number of factors. There was a lot of over supply in a lot of areas of apartments with that change in the R codes 18 to 24 months ago, and that's still taking some time to be washed through. And really you should only be looking at units if there's something unique about them in small groups. And you need to look at the different unit types differently. You can't just chuck all units in the one bucket. A unit, as far as all the stats are concerned, is anything that's an apartment, a townhouse, a villa, and an old traditional unit. So when I say units, I would be more focusing on those that have a higher land component, like the villas and the townhouses, and you will find that they will really remain popular over the next 2 to 5 years. And with the majority of the developers now building apartments, they'll actually start to become a lot more unique and sought after. So if you can't afford a house in a top end middle range area, look to the villas and townhouses to get into those suburbs where the amenities are better, where there's likely to be more growth over the shorter term. Now, of course, if you want specific advice on where to buy, we've been hearing from a lot of investors over on the East Coast these last couple of months. Been getting heaps of people along to our Property Investor Meetup, so I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you at one of our next ones. Make sure you check it out. We've had a whole range of topics so far, from investors telling their stories to property development, and this month we've got one on depreciation and using that to maximise your overall returns on a property. So hopefully I'll see you along at that. Otherwise, let us know if you need any specific property advice.